Today, we're going to be talking about the NBA for Game 1 and the series of the finals, as well as a daily fantasy Draftkings lineup that me and my cousin Eric have made. So, Eric, you can go ahead and introduce yourself as my cousin to the show.
Well, thank you. Yeah, guys, my name's Eric, big sports fan. I'm glad that Zach has asked me to be a part of this. So anytime he wants me to be on here, if I'm available, I'm happily going to do it. So I'll look forward to, chatting with him about sports and seeing what you guys think to our podcast. So anybody that's listening, thank you.
Unfortunately, Eric is an Oklahoma City Thunder fan, and he went through a pretty rough postseason watching my Portland Trailblazers pretty well dismantle his team. So,
dang, okay, I did not realize we were going to go into that. Yeah, well, I
gotta
didn't.
give the audience some background knowledge on us.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, as Zach said, I am a Oklahoma City Thunder fan. So I know for this first podcast, we're mainly going to be talking about the finals coming up and our DraftKings lineup that we set for Game 1. But maybe for like an off-season video, I will definitely discuss what I think the Thunder need to do. Definitely a rough playoff for sure, but the wound is still too fresh right now. I'm still too salty about it, so probably would rather not talk about that right now. So, anyways,
all right. So let's get to Game 1 here in Toronto between the Golden State Warriors and the Toronto Raptors. I thought it was interesting that even though Toronto is obviously in Canada, a majority of Americans are supporting the Raptors. Obviously, nobody likes seeing the same team win over and over again, like the Patriots in football. So people are having that same sort of feelings towards the Warriors. I think the addition of Kevin Durant to the team has really made that grow. Steph Curry is a likable guy. I like Steph Curry, even though I'm a Blazers fan, and they just swept us. I like Klay Thompson. Draymond, obviously, has his moments, so he's not very fan friendly. But the rest of the team, I feel like, is, except for him and Kevin Durant joining them. And then also, I think the Raptors are Kawhi Leonard. I think is a very popular player just by how quiet he is and how different he is, sort of. But that's just obviously the fans. What do we think is going to happen in the game? I've got the Raptors winning Game 1, and the reason I've got the Raptors winning Game 1, obviously Kevin Durant's not going to be playing for sure. That's already been disclosed. But the Raptors on their home court have been very solid in the past few series against Philly and the Magic. Golden State hasn't been playing in like a week and a half or so. I feel like they're going to be coming in a little bit rusty, whereas Toronto's obviously just finished their series with Milwaukee not too long ago. So I've got Toronto winning by about 10 points. I think Kawhi is going to have
double digits.
Yep. I just don't see Steph continuing his dominance as into Game 1. I feel like Game 1 is perfectly primed for the Raptors to win, but I'd like to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah, well, and to piggyback off of what you said earlier about with the rooting interest, I definitely agree with that. I mean, even though Steph Curry and Klay Thompson are fairly likable players, and even though most of the team are likable players, nobody still likes to see the same team winning, every year in a row. I mean, this is their 5th year in a row in the finals. So, based off of that, of course, pretty much everybody is going to, root for whatever team is in there against them. So, just like I'm sure everybody was probably rooting for the Blazers when they were playing them, and in their series before that, the teams that were playing them and so on. So I'm definitely rooting for the Raptors. I do, while I'm not necessarily the biggest Kawhi Leonard fan in terms of his personality, I do respect his ability as a great offensive player and defensive player at the same time. I feel like his defensive presence gets a little underrated, but definitely rooting for the Raptors. As for what I think will happen in the game, I could definitely see Toronto winning this game. Do I think it will happen, though, is a completely different story. Obviously, Kevin Durant being out, would be an advantage for the Raptors. But the Warriors have won 5 games in a row without Durant, so I don't even know if that necessarily would slow them down. I'm thinking, I still think that Golden State wins this game. I do feel like Toronto might be a little tired, although they have had a few days rest, even though their series went longer than the Warriors series did. But it's always interesting to see in these different types of situations where, does it benefit the team that gets the more rest, or is it more beneficial for a team to play like, the bunch of extra games and be in a better rhythm? And, sometimes a team that gets the rest comes out on top and dominates, and sometimes it's the other way around. So, but both teams are hot. So both teams have, won several games in a row. So it's really tough to say, but my gut feeling still tells me that the Warriors are going to win this game. I don't see, I don't know exactly what the matchups are going to be, but if Kyle Lowry is going to guard Steph Curry, then that does not, that would not scare me if I'm the Warriors at all. I think Stephen Curry would have a field day on him, but if it'd be interesting to see if they switch and put Kawhi on him since he's their best defender, but I don't know if they would do that or not.
See, I'm actually going to disagree with you there. I think Lowry's a really scrappy defender. He's not the best defender in the world, but even though he's got a short height, Stephen Curry's got a short height too. They're going to be about equal in height, and I think Lowry just plays scrappier. He, ball checks. He just pokes the ball around, and I think he's actually going to bother Steph. And then as far as the matchups go, I expect Leonard and Thompson to be guarding each other on both ends of the floor, mainly because the Warriors' best defenders would be Klay Thompson, and he would probably be matched up against, obviously, Toronto's best offensive player. And they play, I know Thompson's a guard and Leonard's a forward, but they're about equal in height. And the reason why I have confidence in the Raptors in Game 1, and I'll just go ahead and say it, I have Golden State winning the series. But
okay,
in the 2 regular season matchups between Golden State and Toronto won both of the games. They won at home in overtime in kind of like a shootout game, 131-128. Leonard had 37. And then they also won at Golden State by 20. So, I mean, that right there tells you that they have a shot. I think the Warriors win the series in 6. And then also another thing I think is that I don't believe Kevin Durant's going to play at all in the series.
So you think Golden State's exaggerating the possibility of him being able to return?
I do. Initially, when the injury happened, a lot of people were saying that it was an Achilles tear, and that's what it looked like to many. Then the Warriors said it was a calf sprain or something, but if it is an Achilles, then that obviously takes a lot longer. And Steve Kerr has said that the injury is worse than we thought. And originally, when they said the injury was worse than they thought, it'd be 3 to 6 weeks. And it's been 3 weeks now. the rest of the finals won't take 3 weeks. So I have a feeling that Durant, while I believe he wants to play because obviously the Warriors are doing so well without him and proving to everybody that they don't need him to win, I believe he's motivated from that. But I just don't feel like, I mean, he hasn't been conditioning or doing anything basketball related. So I have a hard time
Yeah,
seeing him coming back at all.
it might actually be an advantage for the Raptors if Kevin Durant does come
Mm-hmm.
back, as weird as that sounds, because, like you said, he's not been doing any basketball activities. He's obviously going to be rusty, most likely. And if he does come back, it might even be like only in a limited role. And if he comes back in a limited role, then that might even prevent, the other players around him. It might mess up their rhythms, like
Yeah.
it's really going to be interesting to see what happens. And another advantage that, well, a advantage that I do have for the Raptors also in this series, I still do slightly disagree about the Kyle Lowry thing, despite your points. I do also feel that he's, in most postseasons he's been in, he just, for whatever reason, like,
That's true.
does not
That's
compare
true.
to his regular season self. So I still don't necessarily worry about that. But what I do worry about for the Warriors is if DeMarcus Cousins is still not able to come back, I feel like Toronto has a much better edge with their bigs than Golden State does. Now, if DeMarcus Cousins comes back, then that changes it. But I know as of right now, he's still questionable for game one.
Mm-hmm.
And even if he does play, he's going to be limited. And also, I've also been hearing that Andre Iguodala is also questionable, and he's somebody that, you might consider putting on Kawhi Leonard.
Yep.
But, if he's not
He's very
100%,
underrated, I
then
think.
yeah, he's a very good defender. So he's not going to score you a lot of points. But, if he shuts down, well, nobody's going to shut down Kawhi Leonard. But if he can even like remotely contain Kawhi Leonard, then that's going to be a benefit. But like I said, he's questionable, though. I think he's supposed to play, but if he's not 100%, then that's going to affect him. So the Warriors do have a lot of injuries, and I know it's crazy because just
Yeah.
like over the course of this conversation, like I do like start to feel like as if the Raptors could have a chance to win this series. Like, it's crazy.
I see. I just still think that the experience of going to 5 straight finals is gonna prevail in the end for the Warriors. Excuse me. But you bring up another excellent advantage for the Raptors is not they don't just have better bigs, both offensively and defensively. Obviously, Gasol, Siakam, and Ibaka, their main three, but their bench in general, I think, is a lot better than the Warriors. I know Warriors had some role players step up for them in the Portland series. Jonas Jerebko, one of them in game 2 or 3, he went on like a 5-minute tear. But other than that, the Warriors bench has been very inconsistent, whereas the Raptors have one of the deepest teams in the league.
Yeah, because they got that like Van Vliet guy that's
Van
good.
Vliet,
Like
yeah.
Danny Green can make threes. Like, they've got solid depth all the way around. I mean, and even like you said, I mean, with them having 3 good big guys, like even if one of them like gets in foul trouble or if they were to somehow get injured, like they've still got people behind them that can
Mm-hmm.
fill in. So I think most
Yeah.
people, I mean, I haven't, looked too much into the like media world to see like what people are thinking they're going to happen. But I would assume though that most people would probably assume Golden State's going to like win the series in like 4 or 5 games.
Yeah.
And that's probably, it's probably not going to happen. I mean, they could, obviously, like you said, with them being in the finals 5 years in a row, that they have the more experience in the, deep in the playoffs like this. But I don't know. I mean, Kawhi Leonard's won the finals before. Like, he'll be able to lead the team. Like, Marc Gasol's had several deep playoff runs. Ibaka's been in the finals with OKC before. Like, I know Kyle Lowry's never been there. Like, he's one of their main starters. And Siakam hasn't either. I don't believe, not that I believe
No,
he's never
I
had a
don't think
deep,
so.
so
And
they do have some experience though, like in the finals and deep in the postseason. So it's not like they've got a team full of like young guys who are inexperienced, going in there. They've got a good enough veteran presence, I think, to maybe even overcome that issue.
I think so too. And another reason why I give them the win in game one and a pretty good shot for the series, better than most people do. I think Vegas, I believe, has the Raptors being the second biggest underdogs since last year's Cavaliers team was the only team that's been a bigger underdogs for a finals before, which I thought that was a little bit strange, considering how dominant Kawhi has been. But I think matched up together, these two teams, it's going to be really interesting because Toronto's got good defenders. Like Kawhi is a very underrated defender. Ibaka's a great rim protector. Lowry, I think, is scrappy on the defensive end. I'd expect Lowry to be more inconsistent offensively. Game one against Orlando this year in the very first playoff game.
Didn't he like miss every shot he took in
Yeah,
that game?
he had zero. He had 0 points in that game. Obviously, that was a bad game, but like, I still think Lowry's inconsistencies are going to lie mainly offensively. I think he'll do it. Obviously, you can't stop Steph, but I think he can do a good enough job to limit Steph. I think the real X factor is going to, and then Kawhi guarding Klay, if that ends up being the case, I think he can really do a good job there. And then Draymond versus Siakam. Siakam's a very good defender too. I think he'll be in the NBA Defensive Player of the Year consideration. I don't think he'll win the award, but he'll be in the consideration. So I think the Raptors have a good chance. Obviously my predictions will be, if the Warriors come out and win by like 20, then we'll know that this isn't going to be a series. If they win in Toronto by a large number, but if Toronto wins game one, then I think that'll be a wake-up call that this is going to be a good series.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything you said. And I know at the beginning I said that the Warriors would definitely win, but now that I'm like really thinking about it and listening to your points, like I could definitely see it. I do think Toronto has to win this game though in order to have a chance in the series. Like even if Golden State only wins by 2 points, like I feel like that would be a big dagger for the Raptors because then they would lose home court advantage. And then of course every day, there's the more possibility of DeMarcus Cousins and Kevin Durant, if they're not lying about his injury, if what they're saying is true, then every day looms closer of the two of them possibly returning, and that's what you don't want. Like they have to, take advantage of the Golden State Warriors while they have their vulnerabilities with these injuries. So, and then like I said too, if they lose the game, they lose the home court advantage also. So, I think they need to win these. If they can win the first 2 games, then that would be a big like shock and wake up call to everybody. And they could maybe steal it. Like it would be interesting. The way this series is reminding me of, I can't think of what year it was, but you were a lot younger when this happened, Zach. I don't know if you watched this series or not, because you were probably a kid. But
I want to say that the first like finals were in NBA like playoffs and such, where I really started to watch and like pay attention, was the Dallas Mavericks versus Miami Heat. That was the first like time that I really started.
The one with LeBron.
With LeBron.
Okay. This was before that. I can't think of the year, but it was the Los Angeles Lakers were playing the Detroit Pistons, and the Lakers had Kobe and Shaq, and so and they had the home court advantage. So of course, like everybody thought they were going to win the series. And of course, the Lakers at that time were like the Warriors are now. They'd been there several years in a row, and everybody except for Lakers fans hated them. So I had followed the Pistons throughout their playoff run, and I just really wanted them to win. But it was kind of a similar thing, like you're talking about, like Toronto having the better depth and things like that. Detroit really probably had the overall better team. Like they had Ben Wallace at center, Rasheed Wallace at forward, Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton. Mm-hmm. Like they had a pretty good crew, but still, like no one gave them a chance. And I remember they actually won the first game against the Lakers, and people were still so confident that the Lakers were going to win. I remember during the game 2 pregame, I can't think of which, quote unquote expert it was, but they were talking to the experts, and they were like, is this a must-win game for the Lakers going into game 2? And the guy said no. He said even if the Lakers lost game 2, that the Lakers would still easily be able to win the series. And what ended up happening was the Lakers did win game 2, although it was a really like scrappy battle. I mean, it came down to near the end of the game. But then in games 3 through 5, the Pistons just like destroyed them, and they won the series 4-1. And if Toronto can get up on my point in saying all that was, if Toronto can get up on the Warriors like 1 or 2 games to 0 early on, that could really like shake the Warriors, and this could end up being a similar series to that series that I was talking about. I see you just pulled it up. Yeah, so that so the second game of that series went to overtime. So the Lakers had to go to overtime to even get their one win. But then, like, look at those other scores, man. Game 3, they beat them 88-68. And then they won the final game 100-87. Yeah. Like, that's like crazy.
Obviously,
because
this was 2004, so the way that the rules have changed, the benefit of the offenses, that's why these scores are so low.
It was a different time.
You would never see someone score 68.
No,
in a finals game, that'd be unheard of.
But the thing is, like with your point though that you made earlier about the Raptors having, these like scrappy, tenacious players on defense, that's the same way this Pistons team was built. Like Ben Wallace was not an offensive player like at all. Like he's kind of like some of the guys we've played with on 2K that have like terrible free throw percentage skills. Like he was a terrible free throw shooter, but he was going to protect that paint. And Rasheed Wallace was a scrappy guy that could shoot threes. Chauncey Billups and Rip Hamilton, he just like smothered Kobe as much as he could. Like, I mean, they had Tayshaun Prince too. That was their other guy. Like, he was a really good defender also, the lefty. So like, that's why the Lakers scored such low scoring games, even with Shaq and Kobe and, in some of these games. And, if the Raptors can, even remotely contain Steph and Klay on those threes, like, because the Warriors kind of live by that sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it would be interesting. Like, I'm obviously, since I hate the Warriors, I'm still bitter. As a Thunder fan, I'm still bitter about Kevin Durant leaving.
I'm sure.
So that's another reason why I want the Warriors to lose. But so I hope that it happens, and I could see, I'm not necessarily predicting that this is what will happen, but I could see it going like this, and then people being shocked, like, but the Warriors are all these all-stars. Yeah. But, I don't know. I hope the Raptors can win it. And if they do win it, like, it's going to remind me of this, 2004 finals between the Pistons and Lakers. Like, it'll be if the Raptors are able to win it, it'll be very, like, that series was the first thing I thought of when I thought about this one. So we'll see what happens, man.
Yeah. I will say that I believe that if the Raptors win game 1, there's going to be a huge amount of pressure, in even game 2, if it comes to this, there's going to be a huge amount of pressure for Steph Curry, in Klay Thompson, because while they were able to make, they swept Portland. Many people said, Portland had a lot of injuries with them, and a lot of people viewed that as Golden State was going to win that regardless. So I still think that the Warriors have something to prove, and if Steph and Klay and Draymond, their big three before Durant got there, if they lose games 1 and 2, I can see them just choking like they did in that Cavaliers series before Durant got there.
That's true.
It's going to put the pressure. And then also, if let's say they win game 1 and 2, and then Durant does come back. I don't think Durant will, but there's a chance he could. If he comes back and then he becomes like a distraction and he gets them out of their rhythm, I think that can also benefit the Raptors in the next few games, because I mean the Houston Rockets had the Warriors on their heels in that game 5, I think, and they were probably going to win that game, I believe, if Durant hadn't gotten injured. So I just think this is such a interesting dynamic with the superstar. Many people say best player in the NBA right now, how him being injured might actually be, better for the team.
Better, yeah.
And then, obviously we won't get into the free agency, but I feel like this is so important for the way free agency is going to play out with both Durant and Kawhi. I think if Kawhi wins, it gives a better chance of him staying in Toronto, because obviously they won a championship, and it'll be easier to do that than to join a new super team. But we'll switch over into our Draftkings debate. So both of us made a Draftkings team for game 1 only. So it's only for game 1. And the way it works is you have a captain and 5 utility players. And this is like a salary. You're given a salary, so to say, and the better players are worth more money. So you have to pick a combination of players you think are underrated that are going to have a good statistical game, and then obviously you want your captain to be the best performer, you think. So I'll go ahead and start with my lineup, telling you guys my captains and my utility and why I think they're going to be good for you to put in your lineup if you wish to do so. So my captain, obviously with my prediction that the Raptors are going to win, I've got Kawhi as my captain. I think he's going to have the best game. I do think Klay is going to be well defending him, but I just think that he's going to have he's going to carry them, I believe, in the fourth quarter with rebounds, points. I mean, he can get steals. He's improved his free throw percentage, which is important. So I believe he was the most expensive player in the draft.
He was.
So obviously he's predicted to have the most amount of points. So that's why those are the reasons I made him captain. Steph Curry, I also picked. Obviously, when there's only 2 teams in this sort of thing, there's not, that many players to choose from. He definitely has the potential. If the Raptors don't win and the Warriors win, I think he's going to have a huge game. Klay Thompson, I was able to pick. I think to me, it seemed like Thompson was a little bit cheaper than what he should have been. So I was glad to be able to get him. If Kawhi's on him, it might make things harder for him, but still, I feel like if the Warriors do end up winning, he's going to be a big part of why. And then another guy for the Warriors, I picked Kevon Looney. He'll be their starting center because DeMarcus is hurt, and he's been their starting center for a while now. But with Iggy getting hurt, I mean, he's going to have way more minutes than what he normally has, and he's actually been playing very well lately. So he was kind of the guy on the cheaper side who I think is going to get a lot of minutes, which if anybody Draftkings daily fantasy sort of deals, you want guys that play a lot of minutes because obviously more minutes, more potential for them to score and get. So he's a guy I think is going to get a lot of minutes. And then I've got two more Raptors players. Serge Ibaka. I just feel like he's not that great offensively, but defensively he can get rebounds. It says his fantasy points per game are 28.6, which, to give you perspective, Kawhi's around 47. So obviously these are cheaper guys that I expect to exceed their cost. And then I've got Danny Green. And the reason I picked Danny Green is because he, people forget, but he came over in that trade when they did the Kawhi DeRozan trade. He was part of that trade from the Spurs to the Raptors. And I know in the playoffs he's been kind of inconsistent in some series, and you haven't really heard much of him. But when they were playing the Heat in the last year that LeBron was on the Heat, he actually set the three-point record in the finals. And then Steph Curry broke it later on, but he had the record for three-pointers. So I feel like he's a guy, obviously, playing at home, these role players tend to do better. So he's a guy that I think is most likely to heat up and provide like a huge bench game for the Raptors, and he was pretty cheap in the salaries too. So those are my 6 players that I've got, and Eric, you can go ahead and tell the audience your 6.
Yes, sir. So looking at my lineup here compared to Zach's, we do, obviously, with it only being a 2-team game, we are going to have some of the same players. Looking at my lineup, though, I feel like with Zach having both Kawhi and Steph on his team, I feel like he's definitely got the more superstar-heavy team. Whereas in some of his other players, then were cheaper. I feel like my team in comparison to his is, I guess I'd say mine's like a little more spread out and balanced, I guess. So it's going to be interesting to see like how these two different styles play out. I wanted to have Kawhi and Steph also both on my team, but with some of the other players I wanted to get, I wasn't able to afford both of them. So that's why I went a little bit of a different route. So to go through, I'll do my captain, and then I'll go from my cheapest to my best players after the captain. So I wanted Kawhi really badly, but I went with Steph Curry. He's slightly cheaper. And as I'd mentioned earlier, I don't necessarily worry too much with Kyle Lowry being on him. It's going to be interesting to see, though, with him being on the road, how he does that. I do have a little bit of a concern with that, because he usually does play better at home than he does on the road. But looking at his recent stats, though, in Game 4 against the Trailblazers at Portland, he went off for 78 fantasy points. So, which he did get 13 rebounds in that game, which is, he normally never gets anywhere near that. So I wouldn't expect him to duplicate that. But I don't know. And plus, since as I had said in my original prediction, I had originally thought the Warriors would win Game 1. So that was another reason why I picked them. Now I'm kind of having second thoughts on that, but I'm going to keep my lineup the same. So I went with Steph Curry as my captain. And then my cheapest player after that with my utilities is Shaun Livingston. I think he's cheaper than anybody that Zach had in his lineup. He's 2,400.
So. Yeah.
He was only 2,400. I had seen that in his last couple games, he hadn't done too much. I mean, with obviously him coming off the bench, he's not going to do a lot usually, but I guess he had been playing through some kind of injury or something, and now he says he feels better. So I basically, like sometimes they say in, DFS, they'll say like you'll punt a position away to give you more room at other positions. So I figured with him only being 2,400, if he even at least gets a decent amount of points, that it'll be worth it. So my next cheapest player, this is the last one that Zach and I both have. I picked Looney also from the Warriors. Oh, crap, I accidentally erased him. Let me put him back in there. Oh, don't mess it up. Okay. So looking at what he's done lately with Durant and Cousins both being out and him getting a lot more minutes, he's been putting up the stats lately and playing usually around 25 to 30 minutes a game, which is starter level minutes, and he's only 4,800. So to me, that was a steal. Like when I filled out my lineup, I was getting closer to the end, and I was debating between him and Ibaka, and Ibaka had the higher overall average, but lately Looney's been hotter, so I picked him. So now for my 3 players that are different. So as we talked about earlier, we feel like the Raptors obviously are going to have the advantage with the bigs as long as DeMarcus Cousins is still out. So I picked both Marc Gasol and Pascal Siakam in my lineup. Gasol was 6,000 and Siakam was 9,000. So I went with them because I feel like they should. I feel like they should be able to dominate whatever big, the Warriors try to throw in there. Although Gasol did not do a lot in his last couple games, like if he gets hot though, like he's gotten hot. So with him being only 6,000, with him only being 6,000, I feel like I'm not taking too huge of a gamble on him. Siakam has been pretty solid. I feel like he's going to do pretty well. So that's why I've got him. And then my last player is Draymond Green. I know he's not like a huge scorer, but obviously, again, similar to Looney he's already a starter, but with these other starters being out, he's having to play a lot more minutes. And in the last 2 games against Portland, he got 67 and 64 fantasy points respectively. So, he'll get a, fast break 3 every now and then and get those extra points there. He collects a lot of rebounds. As a good defender, he gets some blocks and steals every now and then. So I know he doesn't get a lot of points per se, but, with rebounds and assists and everything, like he usually has a pretty good total. So that's why I went with him also. So basically, I feel like between having Gasol, Siakam, and Draymond Green in there, I pretty much got the guys that are going to get majority of all the rebounds. So
yeah, that's true.
That's why I looked there. So. And then I'm hoping with Curry being a point guard and the captain getting extra points that he'll get a lot of assists and stuff as well. So that's my lineup. Like I said, obviously we have 3 similar players, but I feel like the difference between ours is since you have Kawhi, who's a little more expensive, like you definitely have the more potential with, the star players to get a ton of points, but I'm hoping with my a little more conservative lineup that I get more consistency throughout the team. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens. So whenever we have our follow-up episode after this, we can compare how our teams did. So
certainly,
and hopefully we'll both get in the top 5 and win $3.
That'd be awesome.
We're balling in the Draftkings, folks.
The one, like I was talking to you earlier, the one that I was struggling so hard, and I really wanted to fit in my lineup was Draymond Green, like you were talking about, because. That guy is almost a guaranteed double-double. Like, I'm pretty sure against Portland, he had some triple-doubles, but, he's, going to be a guaranteed double-double. And it was so hard for me not to put him in the lineup. I believe he was, a little bit more expensive than Klay, but, I was already happy with my other team that I didn't want to, take somebody out to get somebody, a few hundred cheaper because I really believed in them, like Danny Green. I think is going to be a potential gem in my lineup. But if I could make one swap or one change, it would definitely, given a little bit more salary for this thing, it would definitely be to swap out Thompson and Green.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
Looking at their salary, I think Draymond is 2,200 more than, or Draymond is 2,200 more than Klay Thompson is.
yeah,
So that would be a difficult fix to work
yeah,
out
it's
there
difficult.
because
I'd have to change like a couple other players, but
yeah, doing that might make you would either have to take Curry out or and then get like another like fairly expensive person, or you would have to like instead of like Looney and Ibaka have to get people that are even cheaper like Shaun Livingston who aren't really expected to do much. So yeah, that would be a tough call, man.
I'm hoping that somebody in our group, I think there's 10 people playing, I believe.
Yeah, there's 10. I think in the top 5 win money, I believe.
Yeah. I'm hoping that some people take Durant and Cousins, and this is what amazes me is like they're already declared out, but they're still their price is listed so high when I was looking at, because I don't play DraftKings a whole lot. It's been a while since I've done an NBA game on here, but it's like I can understand when players are probable and questionable and stuff why they would be in the lineups, but Durant was like the second or third most expensive person, and he's out. So like I feel like some people, if you're not paying that close attention to things, this isn't like a $10,000 game where you're gonna want to like
do a ton of research.
Do a ton of research that maybe somebody's gonna pick him and then have a goose egg in their lineup. Doubtful, but possible. But
yeah, man. Well, looking at it, I mean, Kevin Durant is definitely out. DeMarcus Cousins, though, the report on him says that he's healthy, but it's just a matter of whether the Warriors. Well, at least this is the latest update on DraftKings. I don't know if there's another.
Okay.
I don't know if there's a newer update since then, but they're still not sure if they're gonna play him yet. Which to me doesn't make any sense. I'm like, if he's healthy, like the Warriors have like no depth at center. Like if he's healthy, I'm putting him in there. Like I don't know why they're even. I guess maybe they're trying to throw the Raptors off, be like, oh well, we may not play him, and and there's hopes that maybe the Raptors will get confused and not know what to do for some reason, I guess. But if I'm the Raptors, like I'm assuming he's playing, but I didn't pick him in my lineup though, obviously because of the fact that it's looking like even if he does play though, they're not just gonna like throw him out there for 40 minutes.
They'll
like
ease him back in.
Yeah, he's probably only going to play like 15 to 20 minutes would be my guess if he does play. So that's why I'm still picking Looney and Draymond because of the fact that DeMarcus Cousins is might not play, and even if he does, it should be limited. So
yeah, because
not only it's going to be. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, not only is he coming off of that injury in the first round, but like the season before he had a big injury, so like it just seems like he's missed so much basketball. Like it's going to be hard for him to have like that great of an impact. Obviously, if he's there, you play. If he's available, you play him. But I'm still not going to expect that much from him, at least in game one anyways. If he shows in game one, if he ends up playing and has a big game, obviously my thoughts on him will change. But until he like really shows something, because he's kind of been forgotten really this whole season, not playing, and then obviously the Durant drama. So it's possible that he could surprise everybody. I just don't see him playing in game one, and he might come back and then start playing, but he's not going to be getting the Draymond minutes, or Steph.
No, definitely not. Like I said, that's why I didn't pick him. Now, this is going to be, if we do make a lineup for every game of the series with all these, potential like returns from injuries, it's, that's going to greatly affect like how we make our lineups, for every game, because say like if the results, stay the same with the injuries and everything, like game 2, I'd probably have a similar lineup to what I have now. But then, like, if Durant and Cousins both come back, like, well, then that throws things off, like that makes, then of course it's going to be tricky, because then it's like, well, how many minutes are they going to play, or, are they worth paying the highest salary for, then did I pick someone else instead? It's going to be a interesting series just all around in general. Like, I'm really looking forward to it. Unfortunately, I'm working the night of game 1, but I'll definitely catch what I can when I get home from work. So
Awesome.
Hopefully I can get cut early.
I'm glad though that we have like a lot of different players, because with there only being 2 teams, the selection's limited. So I was afraid like we were both gonna have Kawhi and Steph, and then some of the same like role players. But it's good that we've got 2 different lineups, and like you said, 2 different strategies too. I don't play this a whole lot, obviously, but it seems to me like the star lineup seems to do better than the balanced lineup in my history of playing this. I don't know what your experiences have been like, but it seems like with the balanced one, you're missing that star that just goes off for like 60 or 70 points or something, and then you've got guys getting like 25, 30, but since you don't have that one guy who's just going off, you're at a disadvantage from everybody else.
I definitely had a lot of concern when I saw your lineup, in the sense that you were able to manage to get both Steph and Kawhi in there, and even still have like a decent team around him. Because when I first started making mine, like, that was my goal, was to get both of them in there. So like, I put them in my first 2 slots. I think I still had Steph as the captain though, and then Kawhi as my first utility player. But I still was not able to like field what I felt like was a great team around that. And I'm like, do I want like 2 great players and 4 man players, or do I want like 1 great player and 5 solid players? Well, I got Shaun Livingston's not a solid player. So I guess my lineup is like 1 great player, 4 solid players, and a mid player. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But so if I know with this being our first episode, we're, probably not a ton of people are going to listen to this, but if you're listening to this and you want to make a, DraftKings lineup, definitely, think about, the 2 different styles that we've presented for you, and, go with whatever you feel is comfortable off of that. Like, if you want to go like balls out and spend the big bucks, then, do the Zach method. If you're a little more, conservative like I did, and, want like a all around consistent team, then do like what I did. There's different ways. There's not just one way to do it. So, I guess like the difference is, with the 2 potential lineups, that, with Zach's, if the 2 star players on his team, like, both go off for like, 70 points each, he's probably winning it. But I guess my hope with my team is that, my 1 star player goes off, and then my other players like outperform. They're obviously not going to get like 80 points, but, my hope is that they can like outperform their salaries and, get a higher total. So that we'll see what happens. So I'm like Zach too. I'm like Zach too, in the sense that I don't always play DraftKings. I don't play this all the time, especially with basketball. But we just kind of thought this would be a fun thing to do. So,
and another thing is like the Currys and the Leonards, they're gonna have almost 100% usage rate within the 10 people playing. So it's really gonna come down to those guys, like the Gasol pick that you had, the Livingston pick, the Green pick, and the Ibaka pick for me, and then both of us took Looney. It's gonna come down to those guys who only 2 or 3 people have, and if one of them shines out, then you're in a good spot. But
if they don't, then I'm out of luck. So
it'll be interesting to see how it comes out. And then for our next episode, we'll share the results of what happened in Game 1 and make our predictions on whatever game is upcoming next, and go from there. So
yeah, definitely looking forward to continuing these videos. And I guess sounds like you're probably close to wrapping it up, but I know if you're listening to this, I'll let Zach go into more details on this because this is his podcast. But I know, Zach, from what we've talked about beforehand, like I know you're wanting to do like a lot of other topics throughout the year, right? Like you're not wanting to just be like basketball focused. Like why don't you tell the listeners like what your plans are for your future podcasts?
Sure. So the way that these podcast series is going to kind of go, I'm obviously the creator of it. I came up with the idea to do all this, and I'm really excited for it. And I've invited Eric, who has been on this first inaugural episode of it. He's going to be a major player in this. And then I've also got several friends and another family member, another cousin, that have expressed interest in joining this. So you're not just going to hear Eric's voice on it every time, but you'll hear my voice on it every time. And then I might do a few solo episodes too as well. But the main themes that this show is going to be talking about are, basketball, both NCAA and NBA. I'm really looking forward to this upcoming NBA draft in a few weeks. Both Eric and I are Tennessee Volunteer fans, so we've got 3 players that are declared for the draft and are showing up in mocks in Schofield, Grant Williams, and Jordan Bone. So both of us, I know I've talked to Eric about it, are excited to watch it and follow it as well as the mocks. So I might even make a mock draft. And I've never really made a mock draft for NBA before, but that just, this year is just so much more interesting for us. So I think we're going to do that.
I'm game.
Yeah, man. So we're definitely going to cover that. The rest of the finals for the NBA free agency. Both of us have, we play 2K, so we know a lot of the NBA players, and, we keep up with sports. So we'll definitely be, basketball will be a main theme. Both of us are football fans too, so as is everybody. That's actually the one sport that everybody that I've talked to is like that's their favorite sport. So that show in the fall and wintertime is going to be talking about both college football and pro football, probably a little bit more pro. Most people tend to follow pro a little bit more than college that are going to be in this podcast. But we're also going to be planning on doing like we did a Draftkings lineup for fantasy. We can do Draftkings lineups for NFL weeks. We can do episodes of, our actual game picks, the teams playing each other, who we think is going to win those games, as well as traditional fantasy football talk, like before fantasy drafts come out, like our rankings. And, I don't want to spoil too much because I am in a league with Eric and another member that's going to be in this podcast. But I'm willing to...
we won't want to give away too much information of who we want to the other person, but maybe we'll do that like after we have our draft. We can have our draft first, and man, look at this guy throwing out ideas live on air. I mean,
it's organic, man. But
thank you.
But yeah, definitely. Both of us are big fantasy fans, like traditional fantasy football fans. So that'll be a thing to talk about, as well as just news in general, major stories and such that come up that we feel are important. And also, if you're listening to this, you're, probably a pretty big, supporter. So if if you guys out there have anything that you want us to talk about, or if a lot of people are saying like, oh, we want to hear your picks like for the top 25 college games or NFL or NBA, like we can definitely cater to you guys. But the main like sports that we're going to be focusing on are basketball and football. Other than that, like baseball and hockey, my knowledge is kind of just limited to the teams that exist.
Same.
And maybe a few players, but I feel like for the best content that you guys will listen to, it'd be about basketball and football, both for college and pro. So that's that'll be the main focus of this show, and this has been pretty fun, man.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. I didn't really know how this was going to go with it being the first episode and everything, but I've had a great time, man, and I'm looking forward to doing more of these. I didn't know if you might want to do this just as a final thought to close out the predictions, but if we wanted to do like what we think will be like a final score prediction for game one.
Sure.
What do you think? Okay, I'll let you go first.
All right, so obviously at the beginning of the show, I predicted the Raptors to win by double digits. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's probably going to be a lot closer than that. But I'm still going to take the Raptors winning. I'll say the Raptors win 106 to 101.
Nice. I like that, man.
Yeah.
And same for me in terms of how Zach changed his mind a little bit from the beginning to the end. Like I'm actually changing my mind up completely, because
okay.
I had said that I figured the Warriors were gonna win, but with it being in Toronto and they just beat the Bucks 4 games in a row after being down 2-0, and like you mentioned, their track record at home and all these injury issues that the Warriors are dealing with, like I could see Toronto stealing this game. I don't know if they're going to win both of the games, but I feel like if they're going to win one at home, that it'll be the first game.
Yeah.
I'm going to go slightly lower score. I feel like both of these teams are pretty solid defensively, so I'm going to go slightly lower, but I'm going to say Toronto wins it 98 to 94.
Okay.
That's what I'm going with. So
awesome.
There's my prediction. Yes, sir.
Yep. And since obviously, this podcast is new in its beginning, like we're not like, set on scheduled dates for the next episodes to come out. I believe like once we start doing this a lot more, like we're going to have like more of a routine, so to say, but there's no real timetable for the next video. Hopefully sometime in the next week or so, we'll at least get one more out for you guys. And I'm going to be putting these podcasts out on YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple iTunes, and I believe that's all for now. If you guys like have another podcast service that you really enjoy, I can obviously put it on that as well. And I will work on an email address to make an email account for you guys to send like suggestions and whatever comments, questions that you guys have for us. But it's been fun, and look forward to making more of these with Eric, my friend Kyle, and our other cousin Connor. So until then, just enjoy the game on Thursday.
Yeah, we'll look forward to talking about it, whether it's me or someone else or whenever.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So I guess I'm going to call this a wrap.
Yeah.
You'll edit this part out.